Hello Boomerang World, especially for those interested in carbon fibre making. This is Adam from England in the UK. Christian just posted a really good video about how to make a carbon MTA, and I've been meaning to do this for a little while, so I'm going to show you how I make slightly more complex boomerang. So what I've got here that I'm going to make today is a rotor, which is a Georgi Dimanchev shape, and the one that I had in packs, the original one, still has actually a really beautiful flight, 50 meters in wind, super smooth, really lovely flight. So I molded it some years ago. In fact, this mold I've got here, I think it's my second mold. I think the first one it either wore out or broke, but this stuff that we use here is super strong. So I'm not going to talk through the molding process today, how to make a mold. That's a completely separate video. So I'm going to just talk through how we lay up a Aussie round boomerang like this, a three-bladed one. So the key for this sort of work is preparation. I can't tell you how important that is. So the bits and pieces I've got here that you can see probably have taken at least an hour of work just to get all this prepared and ready. The actual lay-up process itself doesn't take too long. You have to wait around for the resin to set. For me, not everyone uses the same resins that I do. I've experimented, so I kind of know what's going to work and what's not going to work. So I'll quickly point through what I've got here. So these bits here are the internal crossweave carbon fibre pieces. These pieces here, this is 80 grams square metre unidirectional, which gives the arm longitudinal strength. I think there's 18 pieces of those, which I'm actually going to separate in a minute, so that when it comes to painting them they'll be easy to do. And these are the actual shells. So that's the top shell and that's the bottom shell, so they're all ready as well. And then here we've got the balsa, which is the core. I don't use micro balloons all the time, so for this one here, balsa works well. This is actually 1mm, which is enough to push the carbon out to the outer edges of the shell to give it a good finish. I find that if you don't use balsa and use micro balloons, sometimes it's harder to get a better finish, in my opinion. Although I do use micro balloons for my trick catches. There's some hammered lead here, which I need to get this boomerang to perform how I want. There's 2 pieces for each wing, and then my labels, which are here. And if you can just about make that out there, that's an ultra fine piece of fiberglass, which is used to cover the label to ensure that it gets a really smooth finish on the boomerang, so you can't feel it. So they're all the pieces. So I'm just going to get myself sorted out, and then I'll restart the video so you can actually see the layout process. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is mix up some resin, and this is going to be for the gel coat. So gloves on first. Normally I'd wear a mask, but my door's open here to the little workshop here, so just so I can speak to you during the process. Gloves are on. Mixing pot onto the scales, turn the scales on. These are my resins. So I'm going to need about 6 or 7 grams for these. Right, that's 7.8, that's fine. Now I'm going to work out the hardener. So here's my calculator. So I need 2.34 grams of hardener. So in that goes. Fairly good at judging this. They are 2.4, spot on. Alright, so there's one thing I haven't got ready. A little bit of tissue. Here you go. Clean off the lid. Right. Resin and hardener are now together in the pot, so give this a good stir. I'm making sure this is thoroughly mixed. Just using a wooden spatula. Okay. And I'm using these plastic coffee, not plastic, they're cardboard drinking cups from Costco. They're really cheap. I think they do them in boxes of 100 or so, but they're not too expensive and they're a good size as well. Right, so I've given that a really good mix, scraping the bottom of the cup. Like so. Okay, just wipe the end off there, pop it in my acetone to clean it. So this here now needs to be vacuumed to remove all the bubbles that I've just introduced. Again, I think it helps with the surface finish. So it goes into my vacuum chamber. I'm not going to film the whole vacuuming process, it's going to take about 10 minutes, but I'll show you what it looks like, and I'll restart the process again, the filming process, once it's vacuumed. Alright, just restarting the video there. So we're just coming to the end of the vacuum process. So I don't quite know if you can see that, but basically all the bubbles have gone, and that's taken about 5 minutes to do. So I'm going to release the vacuum. So now we've got a nice bubble-free resin mix. Okay, so now I'm going to need to work fairly quickly now. So I'm going to put a gel coat onto the mould. Now this mould's been freshly painted with a chemical release that I use. I use a mixture of a wax or a chemical release. Just so happens on this mould is chemical release. I kind of flip between the two really, they've both got their advantages and disadvantages. One of the disadvantages of this chemical release is it's so slippery, it causes the resin that I'm painting onto the mould to form into what are called fish eyes. You can see it where these like spots appear where the resin just doesn't want to go. They're called fish eyes and they're quite annoying. You'd think this resin, which is super sticky stuff, would stay where you've painted it, but the chemical release is so good that it causes the resin to not go where you want it to. I'll show you what I do to deal with that. It's particularly bad at the moment because I've just freshly painted this mould with the chemical. So that's that one done there. I'm going to repeat the process for this half here. So painting around each wing. Liberal amount. So this resin will take approximately, if I was to leave it standing in the pot, it would take about 10 minutes before it became unworkable, which isn't a lot of time really. But once you spread it out on the wing here, and there's lots of factors that can influence how quickly it goes off. If I'd use the wrong percentage of hardener, for example, or if it's too warm. It's actually quite warm today, but I understand, or from experience I know that I should be within my limits of time for this particular mix. Right, so both mould halves done. You can see the terrible fish eyeing on this one. So what I'll need that in a minute actually. So what I'm going to do is just keep going over this over the next few minutes, because as it goes off it becomes less prone to fish eye, and eventually I kind of reach a happy balance of some fish eyeing and some resin where I want it to go. So I'm going to pause the video, because this is all I'm going to do now for the next few minutes, is just keep spreading this resin back out till it starts to go off a little. So when this is close to going off, I'm not going to film this little bit here, I'm actually going to mix up a second batch of resin ready for some of the shells I'm going to be doing. Alright, so I'm just going to pause the video there and we'll come back. Okay, welcome back. I've given this a couple of minutes. I'm just going to spread the resin out one more time. What I'm going to do now, I've still got the first batch of resin in the pot, is I'm going to apply my first label to this. This is the top of the mould, and in the top of the mould I have no labels. I'm just thinking here with this boomerang I've got 2 labels for the bottom. So I need the top mould piece. This is arm 1, and obviously it's the wrong way around, so I'm just going to spin that over. There's my arm 1. Arm 1 is marked on the boomerang here. So here's arm 1 here, 1 dot, that's what that means. Let's pop that over there for a sec. This is still the first batch of resin, it's still workable. So before I pop this in, just very quickly make sure everything's covered. I only want a few seconds to get this in. Quickly grab the carbon and in it goes. So I start at one end, slide carefully. I've done this so many times, sometimes I still make errors. I hope I don't do any today. So that looks okay. So carbon looks well positioned. Press it carefully into the mould, like so. Happy with that. Now with the remaining resin, so this is getting slightly thick now, this resin, but it's still okay. So I'm just really now just going to focus on pressing this carbon into the mould, like so. I'm not actually going to push any more fresh resin onto this because this is getting a little too thick. So before it gets unworkable, let's quickly go to the top half of the mould. And I can already see this is starting to thicken up, but we're okay still. This is okay. So there you go, quickly grabbing the labels. So there's my nameplate. There's my other label. I can go somewhere like so. I've got the 2 labels here. Again, just quickly making sure what I'm doing here is just making sure that there's resin applied to everything. There's no dry spots. Dry spots is obviously going to be bad. You want resin on that outer surface of the boomerang. I'm happy with that. So quickly now, here are my 2 labels prepared earlier. Paint over the first one quickly, and the second one quickly. Flip it over, so that goes there, like so. The second one goes there, like so. Okay. Now quickly getting the shell for the bottom. Shell goes in. Exactly the same way again now, pressing down in the carbon before that resin underneath starts to go where it shouldn't do. So we're really up against the clock now, so I'm going to quickly mix up a fresh batch of resin. The video will be paused. Okay everyone, welcome back. I'm moving quickly now. I've just mixed my second batch of resin. I'm about to paint this. While I'm working, I do need to start vacuuming the third batch of resin, so there will be some noise and I probably won't talk so much because you won't be able to hear me. Right, so let's get this started. Just in case you can hear me, so this resin's nice and runny, so I'm now going to go over the first layer of carbon, making sure it is thoroughly wetted out, paying particular attention to the edges, pressing down with the brush, working quickly and methodically to make sure nothing is missed. So the resin's nice and runny at the moment because I've only just got it out of the chamber, so the chemical reaction hasn't really thickened it yet. So it's good to work with a resin like this, nice and easy, making sure all the carbon's wetted out. I'm pressing quite hard, so that's 3 wings done on there. While it's still wet, I'm going to quickly grab my internal carbon. They're numbered, so I know exactly where they go. This is wing 1. This is wing 2. See, it fits in really well. And here's wing 3. Again, quickly going over this dry carbon with this nice wet resin, thoroughly wetting out, pressing down, working quickly. Second wing, the third wing, like so, pressing down again, making sure nothing's been missed, nice and wet, a bit more there because it's starting to absorb it. I'm fairly happy with that. Swapping over for the other half of the mould, exactly the same. So this is still the first layer of carbon, wetting it out. one done, second arm. Carbon work is tricky as hell. This, I can tell you my friends, is sometimes super stressful, and it is not as easy as it looks. Over the years I've probably made, well I know, not probably, I have made over 1,000 carbon boomerangs. That's been over about 20 years. And I still make mistakes now, believe me. So I'm fairly happy with this. Looks to be nice and wet, which gives it a nice finish underneath. Remember, this is pressing against a super smooth mould surface. Right, so quickly, while it's still wet, getting my internals. So arm 1, closest to the camera. Here's arm 2, closest to me. And finally arm 3. Again, working quickly, wetting out the second layer of carbon. Resin's still fairly good, starting to thicken a little, still very, very workable. And there's still a couple of grams in here, so we're fine. So the third batch you can hear buzzing in the background there, it's just going to be needed for my unidirectional. So all looking good here, I'm quite happy with this. That looks fairly good. I'm nearly out of resin now, but I'm okay. Right, so that's good. So finished with that pot. That pot's nearly empty. I think I mixed up 10 grams on that one. No, that's 12 grams actually. So all that remains to be done now is for my unidirectional. What I'm going to do is swap this around so you can see what I'm doing. Here's the uni. Right, I've just checked the resin, it's looking good. So I've got about 18 pieces here which need to be laid in here, which I'm going to do in just a sec. Okay, the resin's still bubbling a little, but it'll be fine. I'm going to stop this now. Releasing the vacuum, you can hear. Third and final batch of resin, which is going to coat both sides of the unidirectional. This will just take a couple of minutes. You know, normally I only have about 4 pieces of this, but I've worked out for this particular mould it's pretty good to use these like little pieces. They fit in them. This rotor mould's quite thin in places, so I have to fold this over, and it works out quite well. Right, so that's every bit of uni done. So now I have to turn them over to do the other side. So working quickly. Getting a bit fiddly. I coated a couple of these with some of the previous resin and they're getting a bit sticky. I wish I hadn't done that actually, but they're okay. I needed 4 bits, I think. So I'm turning over all the pieces that have been done on one side, and then I'm going to quickly paint over the other side. So they're all turned over. Bit of kitchen towel, messy work, this resin business. Right, so here we go. So now, working quickly to get the other side of the uni done. I've got plenty of resin here, this is all I need the resin for actually. Nice and quick. Okay. 3 more bits left to do. Okay, so now to place these into here, I think it's 3 bits per arm if I'm not mistaken, so I'm folding them in half as well to make sure they fit. Really kind of doing this any old house. I've used 2 pieces there, there's 3, 4. This is going to make sure the boomerang is nice and rigid. It's unidirectional, don't have to make a lot of difference. 5. Oh, that's 6 pieces in. So I'm just folding them in half, you can see, so just make sure that they don't go over the edge. 6. So now I'm just going to 7. Okay, I'm just doing some extra bits here. There's 9 pieces per side. So there's 9 there. So I'm happy with that. So that's 9 pieces in. So I've got 9 for the other half to do. But before I do that, I'm just going to place the weights in. Now I happen to know the best place to put the weights from experience. So there's my first 2 weights. Here's my second 2 weights. And here's my third. Alright, that's that one done. The balsa goes in this half as well. So here's my balsa, 1mm, ultra lightweight. You wouldn't think this makes any difference at all, but trust me, it does. It pushes the carbon out to the edge of the mould and just makes it, give it a really good finish. It's the advantage with this over micro balloons, in my opinion. I do use micro balloons for MTA, so right, sometimes. Right, so these are numbered. So number 2, that's 2 dots, that goes there. Yep. This is number 1, so 1 dot, that goes there. And I pre-check these obviously before we got to this stage to make sure they fitted exactly. And here's the last bit of balsa. Alright, everyone happy with that? So that's done. That half is ready. Let's get that over there. So I'm bringing in my other. I've just got a little bit more resin in this pot, so why not just go over this one more time. Still quite runny, which is good. I'm happy with that. Unidirectional in. Got 9 pieces here. 1, 2. These are slightly longer, these ones. 2. There's a long beat there. 3. 4. 5. 6. And 3 more. I'm going to do over that thin middle section to reinforce it. So kind of there, 7. Yep, Same with that one, just over that bit there, 8. And last one, let's put that there, 9. Okay, so happy with that. Still working fairly quickly. I've just put my brush in the acetone, so you might be able to reuse that. They're quite cheap, these brushes, mind you. Right, this is messy, and I'm going to need a bit of cleanliness in a minute. So I'm just going to pop my gloves off. This is where I use 2 lots of newspaper. Makes for an easy clear up. There you go. So that's all done there. Okay, so I'm just going to join the mould together now. So we need to make sure I get the right bit on the right bit. So that's going to go that way. So here we go. To make sure you can see that. So I'm going to carefully lower that down. Get one chance to get this right. Doing it really slowly. Pressing down reasonably hard. Just get rid of any air bubbles. Alright, and then finally I'm going to prepare it for clamping. So I need a bit more newspaper. Over here, 2 clean bits. Okay, this is my method of clamping, which I found is really clean. So here's my wood protection pieces. So that's the bottom piece. So newspaper goes on top, like that. Then some kitchen towel. I need 3 bits. 1, 2, 3. To go here. 1, 2, 3, like that. Mould goes on top. You can feel underneath where it's positioned. So that's in position. My scissors. So cut away the excess newspaper and kitchen towel, leaving a couple of centimetres overhang to absorb the resin that's going to leak out when I clamp it. So there you go. And then around here, final bit around here. Yep. Okay, so that's done. So it kind of looks like that. It doesn't have to be exact this. This is going to absorb resin that squeezes out the mould. Where's the bit? So there's my top. So that goes on there. And then my final bit's clamping now. So I think you can see this just about. My clamps are behind me. So I'm just going to reach off. I need 3, 4, 5, I need 7 clamps for this. So I'm going to do the tips first with gentle pressure. So I don't want to cause the mould to lever up on one side. So this is all going to be done fairly gently at first. So it's just finger pressure, so there's 2 done. Okay, there's my 3rd clamp. A little bit tighter now just on the ends, but not too tight yet. So I want to evenly get that middle one clamped down. So all this is going to be even pressure. So there's that. So now reasonably tight now, in order. Getting tighter. Okay. Before I give that massive tightening, I'm just going to put on the remaining 3 clamps, which you can see go in the 3 spaces. And there's that one. 2 more clamps. If I come from this side here, that one. Final clamp on. Done. So now tight. This is going to be tight. Really tightening down now. That's done. done. Oh yeah, that's done. Okay, just the middle one now. Okay. Oh, done. So there you go. That's how you lay up tri-blade or Aussie round. You can see on here, I can probably get a bit of light, so you can see how some of this resin's squeezing down. And what happens is this newspaper and kitchen towel, basically when I come to release the mould tomorrow, it'll should break away fairly cleanly, and I'll show you the demoulding process tomorrow. Hope you found that useful. That's how you make a rotor carbon.